In the first chapter of the Capital titled Commodities, Marx lays the foundation for his exploration of societies and their wealth. He starts by examining the concept of commodities, which serves as a crucial framework for understanding capitalism. Marx defines a commodity as an object external to us, something that, by its attributes, fulfills some human need, regardless of whether it caters to basic necessities or more refined desires. Essentially, when a worker creates an object, like fabric, shoes, plastic, or houses, through their labor, it doesn't belong to them, but rather to the employer. This fundamental fact transforms the object into merchandise, or in simpler terms, a commodity. The person with wealth and commodities, according to Marx, represents the bourgeois, while the worker embodies the proletariat. What's especially significant is that the bourgeois, by owning the capital, exercises authority over how these commodities are utilized and exchanged. Marx goes on to delve into the concepts of use value and exchange value as part of this discussion on commodities. Marx emphasizes that every useful thing, like iron or paper, can be evaluated in terms of its quality and quantity. The various ways things are produced naturally lead to different ways they are used. It's the task of history to recognize these different uses and the social norms that judge them. Use value, as Marx describes it, arises from the usefulness of an item. However, this usefulness isn't an abstract concept, it's tied to the physical characteristics of the commodity. So, whether it's iron, corn, or a diamond, as long as it's a tangible thing, it possesses a use value, meaning it serves a practical purpose. This characteristic of a commodity exists regardless of how much effort was put into obtaining its useful qualities. Importantly, use values only truly come to life when they are used or consumed. They form the core of all wealth, regardless of the specific societal structure. The key takeaway is that the true usefulness, or use value, of a commodity can only be understood when the object is part of an exchange system. Use value is tightly connected to exchange value. Additionally, it's not a matter of fitting neatly into either quality or quantity, it involves both aspects. Marx points out an important aspect about exchange value. He observes that it might seem like exchange value is arbitrary and only relative to specific situations. This means that attributing an inherent value directly connected to commodities seems contradictory. The contradiction arises from the fact that exchange value cannot be solely determined by the commodity itself. Instead, it brings about something separate from, yet common to, the commodities being exchanged. To put it simply, the exchange values of commodities need to be expressible in terms of something they all share, indicating a greater or lesser amount of that common thing. This common factor isn't a natural property like size or chemical makeup. These properties matter only to the extent that they affect how useful the commodities are. The act of exchanging commodities involves a complete disregard for their specific uses. In this context, one commodity is considered just as good as another, as long as it's present in enough quantity. Marx is essentially saying that exchange value is a way of representing a shared quality that exists both within and beyond the commodities. This quality becomes evident only when exchange value is viewed as a detached concept from use value. Marx highlights a crucial point. A commodity, being the result of a worker's efforts, inherently carries the essence of human labor within it. Essentially, it tells us that human labor has been used in its creation, that human effort is embedded in it. When Marx talks about human labor power, he's referring to the combined labor capacity of society, which is reflected in the total value of all commodities produced by that society. It's essential to consider labor power in terms of what is socially necessary, meaning how society values and assesses labor. The value of one commodity compared to another is determined by the amount of time it takes to produce each. In simpler terms, the more efficient the production process, higher productivity, the less labor time is needed, and consequently, the lower the value of the commodity. Conversely, if production is less efficient, lower productivity, more labor time is required, resulting in a higher value. This means that the value of a commodity is directly tied to the quantity of labor put into it, and inversely related to how efficient that labor is. The value is a measure of both individual labor input and what society deems necessary for production. It's crucial to recognize that labor is what gives a commodity value, but it doesn't determine its usefulness. Usefulness is determined by the object's practical benefit. Labor creates value, and when a product serves a purpose, it's considered useful. The value and utility of a commodity signify the abstract idea of human labor in general. The actual physical labor invested in creating an object represents both the specific goal of the product and human labor in an abstract sense. The expenditure of labor, in terms of the abstract qualities attributed to human effort, shapes the value within commodities. Ultimately, the value of a commodity and the collective human labor it represents are relative to what current society deems necessary for meeting human needs and desires. This adds depth to our understanding of the concept of a commodity. Commodities are products that come into existence through individual labor before becoming part of the collective society. When we combine individual labor efforts, we create the overall human labor, representing the collective effort of society. In terms of practical use, a commodity seems straightforward. It fulfills human needs and is the result of human work. However, what makes a commodity complex and mysterious is the idea that individual labor takes on a social form. In this social form, determining and quantifying the value of individual labor becomes a challenge. Even though individual labor is inherently subjective, the quality of human labor is assessed objectively, which gives rise to the enigmatic character of the product of labor. The value of labor, both individual and collective, is affirmed through its social relationships. This social aspect leads to the fetishism of commodities, where the social nature of the labor that produces them is the origin of this phenomenon. Just as the practical value of commodities is realized through actual exchanges, the social value of individual labor becomes apparent when the product of labor is involved in exchange. This social aspect blurs the line between individual and collective labor. The intertwining of the individual and the social, and consequently the stages of commodity production, is what creates the mysterious and enigmatic nature of commodities. Moreover, this intersection between the individual and the social becomes the focal point of the fetishism of commodities. A commodity appears mysterious because it presents the social character of human labor as an objective trait imprinted on the product. This portrayal of the producer's relation to the total sum of their labor is seen as a social relationship existing not between themselves, but between the products they create. This is why products of labor become commodities, appearing as social entities with both perceivable and imperceptible qualities. This contrast with physical properties and material relations is what gives rise to the fetishism attached to commodities. Commodities are shaped by their inherent social nature and are influenced by current social trends. What may have been considered useful in the past may have a different utility today, or may even be entirely outdated. Human labor also reflects these changes in society, evolving as society itself does. The proliferation of machinery, for instance, has rendered much human labor obsolete. Machines like the cotton gin, sewing machines, and computers have questioned the value of certain individual labors that were previously socially valued commodities. While the basic concept of a commodity remains constant, what changes over time is how products are identified and labeled as commodities. Commodities, in this sense, serve as a critique of capitalism, acting as markers of what society currently deems valuable. They reflect the progression of history and the evolving understanding of utility, both in the past and present.